Well, it's Wednesday morning at 10 o'clock, 10:01 on my computer. But I pushed the button to start at 10, so we'll let that count. Um, no, this keeps saying relaxing painting with Dyson Dungeons. And to be honest, it used to be relaxing painting with Dyson Dungeons because I did a lot of painting, especially on the submarine and even parts of the Apollo up till now. But now it's been mainly relaxing, finding parts, cleaning them up, sanding them down, spray painting them somewhere else, and then assembling them. Because that's just the way this model is. There's just not much detail painting on it. So there isn't much painting involved. Maybe the next model I'll do will be back to painting. There will be a little bit of painting coming up. I've got these astronaut figures that require some detail painting on like their face and their face mask and some of the little attachments to their suit and that kind of thing. But the thing I'm working on now, I'm working on two things here. One is I've got the parts over there in a box for the fairing that contains the lunar module and supports the whole rest of the model. Okay, so I've got those done and they're ready to assemble. And I don't know if I feel like cementing stuff today or not. We'll see how it goes. I mean, they look okay. It isn't. The problem is that there's these big pieces here are hinged, and these hinges are, let's just say they need to be very, 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 very firmly adhered to the side of the base ring. Otherwise, they'll pop off because the way these work is you kind of lift them up and pull them down, and there's a tendency for the forces to push away on that hinge. I know it's little, but you can see the hinge there. And then it would pop it off, and then we'd, be left having to fix it again. Anyway, at some point it has to be done. So maybe it'll happen today, maybe not. Just don't know. The other thing I'm working on is the Lunar Excursion module, and that comes in two parts. It has lots of parts. The LEM here starts here, and all of these things, these little bits, all these tiny little bits for the attitude control jets need to be, taken apart, cemented together, and then sanded down. And then these little bits, on the outside that get attached, a hatch and a couple of antennae that need to be attached later. The descent stage is a lot more complicated. It's got all these little struts, the landing struts, and the landing struts fold so that they're hinged in some complicated ways that may or may not work. I don't know. But eventually it ends up looking like this, and then together they form the LEM. You can see how they're kind of folded up there, and they go inside the fairing. This is the fairing. Looks like some sort of chimney or something. Anyway, I've got the parts to the parts here. This up so you can see all the parts. These are most of the parts for the lunar module. This is the rest. They're little bits that have come off the trees. And then we've got the astronaut figures here that I kind of sanded down. I'm going to go over them again today and then prime them and paint them between now and Friday, I think. And maybe I'll do some painting on the astronauts, on Friday. I haven't done painting in ages, so that would be a thing to do. The ascent stage is a little bit trickier than, both of these present challenges. So I'm going to decide whether I'm going to do the ascent stage, going the part that goes back up off of the moon, when they're all done. There's sort of a picture of it here. These are the not very good instructions. See that when the thing lands, it looks like this. Okay. But then that part, that's the part that let it land. the landing engine and the landing struts, but when they don't need this anymore, so it just stays on the moon forever. And when the ascent stage goes back up and rendezvous with the command module up in lunar orbit. I guess I'm going to work on the ascent stage. There's just a lot of fiddly stuff involved. These little bits need to come off and be matched up and cemented and then sanded down. All of these, there's 16 of these reaction control jets. I had practice with these already because I had 16 of them on the service module that actually finished a while ago. So I think what I'm going to do, this is going to be my working box, okay, is I'm going to transfer the parts of the descent stage, the part that comes down. I'm going to put those in a different box because I'm not going to be working on them for a while, so I don't need them. I'm going to put those in a different box and keep this for just the ones that go up on the ascent stage. So last week, if you recall, the theme of last week was Old Curmudgeon complains about newfangled gizmos. And I said I was going to be done with that, but there was one newfangled gizmo that I need to complain about still, and that is anthropomorphic robots that are supposed to look like humans. And I'm going to complain about those because despite the fact that probably hundreds of millions of dollars have been spent all over the world, and thousands and thousands and thousands of person hours programming these things and fitting together all the little micro things and whatever, all you end up with are things that you take to like Comic-Cons or whatever, and they stand there and they'll take like 3 steps and not fall down, and everybody goes, ooh, wow, that's great. Well, a 1-year-old baby can do that. It's just like, why spend, what is it, and what good does that do? This is my rant today. So, and what purpose is that other than being mildly entertaining at a con kind of setting? I don't know. And then, they move, you can make them so that they move their fingers now. So somebody spends a bajillion hours and time and money and everything going, oh, look, it can go like that. Oh boy, wow, that's really something. What good does that do? Nothing really. So, I suppose it's like spending tens of millions of dollars making a bad movie, right? I mean, that happens all the time too. So why not spend hundreds of millions of dollars making bad robots? Anyway, I just thought I'd do that to kind of like wrap up old Curmudgeon complains about newfangled things, newfangled gizmos. Yeah. So what can I talk about? Well, what I can talk about is, putting these parts in the other box. There's another box here. I'm putting the parts to the descent stage in this box. A lot of them are still on the trees, which is nice. That way they don't get too lost too much. And then some of them are in this container. But what I want to do is I want to find the parts that go to the ascent stage and put them in this box, because I'll need them for that. And they're scattered around in here somewhere. I guess I have to dump them out and start over. So this hatch is part of it. This ends up going on the top. And then there's this antenna. There's this weird spiky antenna thing. This antenna, are there 3 of them? I'm going to have to look at the instructions. So I know that these wishbone-y kind of things and these landing, these are the landing pads. These belong to the descent stage, as does the ladder. You have to have a ladder. Yeah, see all these little weird, little delicate parts that are going to be very easy to break or have to come together and be cleaned up very, very carefully and hinged so that the landing struts fold. They fold down so that they fit inside the fairing, and then they fold out so that you can land the LEM. I need to see if all three of these antennae go on the ascent stage or not. This one definitely does. The hatch does. This little weird one does. I don't know if this one does or not. See where that goes. Oh, okay. Yeah, I needed this other part. That was this weird little thing where it goes right up on the nose of it, and it needs this thing to hold it. Kind of forgot about that. Okay, so all of these parts will come together to form the ascent stage of the lunar module. These parts there in that box, okay, will be part of the descent stage that I will work on afterwards. I can close this box. There it is, closed, and move it out of the way. So the other thing that's new is I got a new toy. I had been talking about many times. I've talked about what I need is a little saw, okay, so that instead of an X-Acto blade trying to cut these off the trees, and potentially damaging them in the process. And I don't want to do that because filling in little niches isn't all that much fun. Oh, that's right. I filled in gaps in the boots of some of these guys, so I got some sanding down to do today. Do that later. I want to take these parts off the plastic sprue or trees without damaging them, because then it would leave like a notch, and the notch is hard to fill in. I talked about getting a little saw, and so I did. I bought a little saw, and let's do an unboxing, right? We'll do an unboxing today. This is the saw handle, I guess. The pictures online when I bought this said that it came with blades. They showed the blades along with the handle, but then the description said, "Oh no, there aren't any blades. Too bad for you. You have to buy those separately." This is like way over packaged. I mean, seriously, it's probably a nice fancy box, but really, whoa, there is a blade. Look at that. Huh. They didn't lie. There's a blade attached. Now I've got extra blades. Now I've got this one. It comes with. It doesn't come with any instructions. Probably a warning. Precautions. Should I read the precautions? That's something to do. I have to fill some time here. Keep out of reach of children under 14 years of age. Take adequate safety measures when using this product. Good. Okay. What are those? I don't know. Keep recapped after use to avoid accidental drop that may result damage. That may result damage. Okay, not quite. Complete contains extremely sharp edges where proper protection when necessary. So the safety instructions are a little vague, like take adequate safety measurements. I think they mean take adequate safety measures. Measurements and measures are different. Anyway, it comes really close to being well translated, but then not. Like take adequate safety measurements. Maybe that means like measure twice, cut once. And then that may result damage. There's a word missing there. May result in damage. So anyway, now I know what I need to do. I wonder what this says. Wow. Okay. This one is like keep out of reach of children under 14 years of age. This is the blade. They're a little bit more stringent here. It says, you can't really read it because it's really tiny. I can hardly read it. It says, it is forbidden for children under 14 years old to use this product. I mean, it's just like not take precautions, keep them out of reach. No, it's forbidden under 14. Do not knock or drop this product to avoid damage and unavailability. Don't. Yeah. Guess what they mean by unavailability is like to avoid damage and breakage or something. It's interesting, just interesting translation. The blade is held in with these two tiny little set screws. They don't give any give us a little screwdriver for that or anything. It looks like, doesn't it look like this should like pull back and forth or something? I guess not. That's kind of cool. I mean, the cap attaches with tiny little magnets, like the ones we use for some of our traps and flames and things. So it doesn't just click on it sticks on like that. Huh. That's kind of interesting. Oh, yeah. And then it goes on the back. It looks like it's supposed to go on the back, but it doesn't. Oh, yeah. If you have to turn it the right way. It's a handle extension. In this direction, it's a handle extension, and the other one, it's a cover. Anyway, I'm going to test this today. I'm going to use this to saw some of these things off the trees to see if they come off without breaking in a way that's better than trying to do them with an X-Acto knife. And then I think I'll work on the astronauts. Oh, that's interesting. The LEM, the Lunar Excursion Module, and the Command Module they're supposed to be the same scale, right? Because it's all one model. But the Lunar Excursion Module astronauts, the ones that are just standing up, are definitely bigger than the ones that are sitting down. It's interesting that they would do that. I'm not sure if cutting against the cardboard is going to work. I've got this beat up. Sometimes you just use things and use them forever just because, like this piece of wood, right? It's got all these little holes in it. So basically what this was when drilling a hole through something like a thin piece of wood, it's a good idea to clamp it down against a bigger piece of wood and then drill all the way through into the bottom one so it doesn't splinter, right? So that's what happened here. But it also just happened that these holes are the right size to hold alligator clips. And so this has become like an heirloom piece of something. When you clamp something into an alligator clip, and they go into the holes there and it holds them. But the other side is just messy with paint. And I'm going to use this as my cutting block when I test this saw. Well, I don't know. Guess I should do something. No, I missed Monday because we were traveling. But place we were staying at a TV channel, so in between doing things, we did things while we were traveling, but in between doing things, watched the TV, and I got to see episodes of both the Flintstones and the Jetsons. I had been talking about those because they were primetime cartoons. That was a big deal back in the 60s when they came out. So I'm going to, I still want to leave a little bit of plastic on there. I'm not going to cut it off right out there. I'm going to leave a little bit. I'm going to use this, what appears, which is much more flexible than I thought it would be. Too bad you can't hear that. It makes a really nice sawing sound. It takes a while to get through. Okay, when I cut it off, no, it didn't leave it. It worked okay. I just need to be a little careful with it. But it very much reduces the chance of breaking the part, breaking this off in a way that would leave a divot in the there. It isn't leaving a divot in the plastic in the model of the LEM. So that's the point. And it's got a nice fine point, so I can get it down, up in there without, affecting anything else. Okay, well, I'll have to practice with this a little bit. This one I cut nice and close there, so you can see there's not too much plastic showing there. I left big chunks of here and here. Those will get filed and sanded and disappeared. So there's that. Now I've got trash. So that was fun using my little saw. This one, this is a good one to use the saw on because it's thin and kind of delicate. Just a lot of these parts are just not really well made. Complain about these. It's especially bad on the landing struts. They're very, very thin, very delicate parts, and they were done with injection molding, and the two parts of the mold didn't match up very well. So the little struts have lines all over them like this antenna does. See this on this camera. This has all sorts of problems, but if you can see it, you can see there's a ridge there where the two parts of the mold didn't line up. So instead of being nice and round, it's got a very significant ridge. Yeah, and it has to be done. And then it's also got one of these stupid little circles. There's lots of these little circles that are molded in that I need to take out. So this part is actually going to be quite a challenge. Anyway, that's fun. I'm having fun with the little saw here. This is a bracket that sits on the, there's two of these, and each one holds a reaction control jet. These bits here cement together to form a bracket that fits into these divots, and then they hold the jets. Anyway, I got to see both Flintstones and Jetsons. And it was a little disappointing, really. I remember the Flintstones show being much better than it was. I don't know. It's not that it didn't hold up. I just think that it just wasn't as good as I remembered it being. You know, back when it first came out. Maybe because it was, the novelty of it then. That might have been part of it. But anyway, when I go on my cartooning things, I just used to say that I wasn't a real fan of the Jetsons because the continuity wasn't really very good. That is to say, from one episode to the next, a lot of things changed. Okay, but maybe it was just like they were reconstructing their house. I don't know. That might have been how things worked in the far future when everybody had like flying cars and stuff. Anyway, neither of them was all that terrific. They played on a lot of what we would consider now to be kind of inappropriate domestic tropes. You know. The smaller the pieces, the worse it is. I see how these fit. These fit into the slots on that. I'm going to look at the instructions. I want to see how these fit before I start cutting them up. I will do a flip for you in a bit. Okay. These are supposed to, they go way deep into here in these pieces. All right. Yeah, I'll do a flip before I finish sawing these off. I'm having a relaxing sawing day today. I'm going to be just doing some very slow motion sanding and filing and complaining about how badly these things were put together. Well, let's do living, not living today. We'll flip this. It's kind of a large piece, but there's nothing here that it can hurt, at least at the moment. No. Two to two. Oh. Not living one. Yeah, well, mixing stick fragments. Okay. Yeah, the flipping parts are just pieces of paint stir sticks that come free with paint, or used to anyway. And that's why that one says paint. So yeah, I don't I can't remember why we tore them up. Anyway, they're in pieces now. See, I'm cutting these parts off, and then going to sand them down, just fit them all. Good look at their numbers here. I'm not sure they're symmetric or not. Okay, yeah, I have to be careful to because they're not interchangeable. Fit with which I'm going to have to be careful to keep them paired up correctly. $72, $73, $74, $75. That's right. The ones on the ends, they didn't just put them in sequential order, right? The two on the ends, this one and that one go together, and then the two in the middle go together. For reasons, whatever. This is not sure this is any faster than the X-Acto knife. I don't think it is, but it's a lot safer in terms of keeping these parts from being torn up. Yeah, they're supposed to fit together, and they're really not. They're not fitting together. Fitting together at all. What is with this? Okay, this is really sad. They have these little alignment pins here and here, and then there's these alignment holes on here. Well, the alignment holes are not deep enough for the pins. Okay, so these two fit together like that. Those are now a pair. This is just, these parts are going to just take forever to get to fit and be cleaned up. These go together any better. Yeah, these at least fit together better. So you can sort of see how this is supposed to look. And then these two little pins here and here, down on the very tip here, that's where the reaction control jets go. So these fit into these slots. This descent stage is supposed to fit in there somehow. Maybe this way. I don't know. To look at the instructions, and then those pins either side, or where the reaction control jets go. At least that's the way it looks. Don't file off the pins that hold the reaction control jets. So I'm going to put this together. Have it in the same orientation as it shows. Oh my, okay. So one there, and one there. Good thing I looked. Those little pins could have been disappeared pretty easily. This isn't going to be easy to do. You know, and getting rid of the seams is going to be kind of a chore as well. At least this one sort of fits together pretty well. I might try to cement these, you know, before I bother getting rid of the little bits of plastic that are still attached to it. I might cement these together first, and then when I get rid of the seams, I'll just do all of it at once. Oh, yeah, nice. There's another flaw here. You can see it. See right there? Right there. There's a divot. You know what that divot is? That divot is because the mold didn't get filled with plastic, and so it left an opening. Great. Label these. Try to keep them in the same place each time. Those were 74 and 75. I don't need to label these 72 and 73 because they're not 74 and 75, right? All right, I've got these little bits. I think maybe I'll do some painting today. Maybe I will. These are really messy. They're really not well molded. These have divots in them as well. I think they just all have divots. The way these little bits work is that one side has alignment pins and the other side has alignment receptacles for the alignment pins, which may or may not align. Sometimes with these models, the pins don't align. A book I read once about how to build models said your pins aren't going to align, sand them off. They recommended sanding like these two parts, that you get rid of the alignment pins altogether, sand them down, and then put them together, and that they would match up better. You would be able to get them aligned better, and the seams wouldn't show as much because they would be flat. This will cement together pretty well. And then it's got like flashing all over the place and seams that need to be fixed. This is a little more complicated because I have to put the windows in. At some point, I need to cut those out of the little bits of plastic that they gave us and figure out how to insert them. Wow, the window frames are just really a mess too. Okay. So the deal here is that I'm going to cement the two halves of each of these things together, all of these little bits. Okay. And then I will, after they're cemented together and the cement sets, then I'll deal with the seams rather than just filing them now and then filing them all again later. I'll just do it once, just once through. There are a few, there's a few things I need to, like they suggested, sand down a little bit so that the parts like this, there's a gap here, and that gap is because of this excess plastic here that infringes on the seam, and it's even worse on this one. So the things I was thinking of painting would be these rocket nozzles. I've done this before. I've got a container with a bunch of little sticks in it, and little sticks fit into the back of the nozzles, so I can hold it with the little sticks and paint them, and then put the little sticks in a holder that we've got. So yeah, I was watching the Flintstones and the Jetsons, and the episodes I saw were all these domestic, 1950s styles domestic tropes. So it turns out that Wilma is pregnant. I'm surprised they did that. I'm surprised they talked, that they even talked about that on the show. I guess it was because it was a primetime cartoon. They could say, "Oh, Wilma's expecting a baby," but it was during prime time, so I guess that was okay. I think that happened before on one of the TV shows. Like one of the actors was actually pregnant, and they had to build it into the show. They actually had to talk about that. Okay, tiny little pieces that I'm hoping do not fall on the floor. I should probably be doing this inside a box so that in case one of them pops out, it lands inside the box and doesn't go flying. That would be a real problem with the X-Acto knife, actually. When you're pushing down on this, sometimes they would pop. With the saw, that isn't becoming an issue. Of these. It is fairly important to not lose any because of how I replace them. What happens, you take them off the tree and you can see there against my finger that there's little bits of it left on either side, and those need to come off before they can be painted. Just like the other ones I did on the service module, there were 16 of them there as well. I did not prime these because they're just so small that even with two-sided tape, they just wouldn't stay in place. So it turned out okay. The paint adhered, which is why if I can get them cleaned up, get rid of those little bits of plastic that are dangling on the edges there, then I can actually get some painting. I do some relaxing painting probably after break because everything's going Everything's taking a lot of time here. Yeah, they did. Fred Flintstone advertised cigarettes. Anyway, the domestic trope was that woman was pregnant, and so Fred said, no, you can't do anything when you're pregnant. That was a thing back then, is that women who were pregnant weren't supposed to be doing anything, which wasn't true. But, you know, it was a medical advice thing in the 50s and 60s. Medicine for women was really not good then. These male doctors thought they knew something. The thing was that Fred said, oh, no, I will do all the housework. Well, duh, you know, this is 1960s. Can a guy do housework? No. Doesn't know how to wash the dishes. You know, can't do the laundry. Fails at everything. That was just that's the way it was back then. If you were a guy, there was no way that you could possibly figure out how to do dishes. Just couldn't do it. So they were going to hire a housekeeper. So they go to the housekeeper agency, and then they spent the rest of the episode. Oh yeah, there was the old mother-in-law stuff too. There was a lot of mother-in-law. She said, no, you can't do housework. No, we're not going to get a housekeeper. I'm just going to call my mother. Right? And no, I don't want her here. And so he tries to get a housekeeper, and every stereotypic female thing that you could do, they didn't. They had the 3 housekeepers. So one didn't keep the house. She just ate everything in the refrigerator. You know, that was how that worked. That was the comedy part. And another one was like a real drill sergeant, waking them up at 5 a.m. and feeding them breakfast, but they didn't eat it fast enough, and she took it away anyway. That was supposed to be funny. There was a third one they didn't hire. It was, the floozy kind, the kind where there's little saxophone music in the background when she comes on screen, that kind of thing. But, did the typical male thing. Fred had to turn into like a slobbering wolf kind of creature almost. But anyway, and that they didn't hire her. But then the comedy part, was that there was a grandmotherly type who was a bank robber. Yeah, go figure. That's how it was. So there was the grandmotherly type who was a bank robber, and she needed a new hideout, and overheard Fred talking about getting a housekeeper. So she became the housekeeper. And made Fred drive the getaway car, and the police showed up, and for a reason arrested Fred's mother-in-law, Wilma's mother. Anyway, it just wasn't as good a show as I remember it being when I was a kid. Just leave it at that. It just wasn't. So, yeah, that was the Flintstones. It was back in the day when those stereotypic tropes, just that's what they were. So I was a little bit disappointed with it, I have to say. I guess I'm going to have to use a file on this because I can't get the sandpaper in. Get this little bit of plastic off of here. So the Jetsons was sort of the same thing too. Yeah. Jetson worked at Spacely Sprockets, and see the big football game. The football game was played by robots. They were very brutal. They destroyed each other. It was kind of like Rock'em Sock'em Robot football. It was weird. But he and his boss wanted to see the football game, but there was supposed to be a PTA meeting for the Jetsons, and I don't know, something else that was supposed to happen for Spacely. Up there is they pretend that George was sick and Spacely had to take care of him, and that way get out of their other social obligation. And then the wives catch on, and well, that worked. None of it was terribly creative. It was just like standard sort of sexist tropes. I think actually a lot of comedy back then. That's what passed for comedy. It was just doing sexual stereotype tropes and ongoing mother-in-law joke kind of things. Kind of anyway, yeah. That's how it was. If anybody out there hasn't really seen the Jetsons or the Flintstones, I'd say, I wouldn't really bother. I wouldn't really bother going back and watching them there, unless you're just really curious about stereotypic tropes in the 1960s. I mean, you might just find that kind of amusing. Just trying to clean these up so that the two parts come together without having a really big seam showing. I don't want to have to fill in a gap. I'm just removing the bits of plastic at this point that seem to be interfering with the parts joining up. Yeah, which they're kind of doing. If I get enough cement on there, those are the kind of things that I put too much cement on intentionally, so that the dissolved cement, the melted plastic, gap. I do not need this much plastic sticking out. Getting without harming a little pin. This one off. It's going to be a problem later. decide what to do about the divot on this one. So disappointing valve. Yeah, well, now I just thought I'd mention that because I talked about the Flintstones and the Jetsons before, and my saw as the relative merits and demerits of each, but I have to just say that the animation in neither of them was very good. Like when they're moving, they just have their legs running, so the animation is just a repetition of their legs moving, and then they had a scrolling background behind them. Just the same background over and over again. So when Fred was walking through his house, he passed the same window 3 times. There was nothing, no furniture or anything. It was just a wall with a window. Yeah, we were on a cruise, and it was definitely aimed at an audience that was my age or older. I'll just put it that way in terms of the humor, or alleged humor, attempted humor. Well, this doesn't fit at all. It doesn't line up. It doesn't come together. This is the one where the deal is here. If it squeezes hard enough, I'm going to be putting alligator pins on this to squeeze them together. So hopefully that will get rid of the gaps somewhat. Get these things to fit. New 70s cartoons. You mean newer than the 50s, 60s cartoons, right? The 70s cartoons were more recent by a decade. These like intentionally not lined up. They're not in line. The alignment pins are not aligning these parts. They're not even close. Okay. This is where I'm going to take the advice of that book and say, just erase the alignment pins because they're not aligning anything. They won't go sliding all over the place. be able to align them. These pieces just really suck. The pin that's supposed to hold the rocket on, the rocket motor, and that almost disappeared. Well, at least the pieces come together now. Sort of. Holding them together will be a little bit of a challenge, but yeah, it'll be even more of a challenge to get those little bitty rocket things on here. Pins disappeared. The thing to which they're supposed to attach on the top and the bottom disappeared as I was getting them to fit together. So there's supposed to be a little pin on the top and the bottom. Yeah, well, those disappeared on this one, so that just will make it just that much harder when it comes time to put the little rockets on. It has the same issue. The tiny little pins that, in this case, it doesn't even exist really. The assembly of this, I can already see, like I said, the alignment pins on one of those are really fine, and the other one is gone, and the other one's almost gone. Same sort of thing is happening here. Not the alignment pins for the two halves, the pin that's supposed to guide the placement of the rocket nozzle. Oh, and these don't line up, not even close. I wonder if the other one would be better. The only good thing is that the parts are small enough that they won't be that obvious. Wow, what is that? Look at this. There's a big piece of plastic. I don't know if you can see it, but on the inside, where there's supposed to be nothing, there's this big piece of plastic just sort of sticking out. Yeah. So these are just becoming very challenging because they're just awful. They're so badly formed. They're not going to. When I test fit these things, I mean, after they're cemented together and I get rid of the seams as much as I can before I paint them, I'm predicting that they're not even going to fit in these channels. Looking at the bottoms of these things. So I'm going to be spending just way too much time getting these little bits, these little pieces presentable, so usable even. Yeah, it's and I have to be careful. I don't want to mess them up. They're not very good. Yeah, these fit together just as badly as the other ones. It's like one side was molded larger than the other. It's very, very odd. Very, very annoying. Yeah, that's the way it looks. Is that don't even line up. Wow. The side with the pins, the one in my right hand, is larger. It's just bigger in all dimensions than the one to which it attaches. I mean, they go together, and I can clamp them, I guess, but they just look terrible. I'm hoping I can manipulate them, file and sand them and whatever, but the two halves just don't fit. Okay, well, that was just really sad how those pieces all worked. How's the time going? Yeah, it's going quickly. Well, I have to cement these things together. They parts need to go together. I will cement them together and then take as much time as I need to get them into a presentable condition. This one's pretty good. That one's not. So let's see what I can do here. Get some of these out. Start with the easy one. Let's start with the one that's sort of working. I want to put cement. I'm putting cement all around the edge. Even if it leaks out a little bit, because I want it to fill the gap. That's one thing I'm going to try to avoid is getting it on my fingers and dissolving fingerprints into the surface. See if these work. There's no flat surfaces here, really, so isn't a good place to grip them. They're clamped. Looks like it'll be mostly okay. This one is the one I took the alignment pins off because it didn't align. The alignment pins misaligned it. Will make clamping it a little bit. It'll want to slide around. Mm-hmm. It's definitely sliding around. This works better. Yeah, just maybe I'll do without the clamps. I'm just going to hold this for a bit, not clamp it. Maybe I'll not clamp these either. Bob Clampett cartoon, Beanie and Cecil. There's a gap there that isn't getting filled. As I can with this. stuff really lines up very well at all. So it will be forced into shape after the cement sets. Yet these are really not good. Even less good than the other ones were not good. The other thing about these bits on the LEM is that they're painted metallic, and so flaws will show in a significant way. It's amazingly bad. Well, hi. I can help out as much as I can. I am familiar with it. Not as much as our DM, but if you have some questions, why don't you go ahead and maybe, if I don't know the answer, I can get it for you. Or maybe who is also in on chat, might know. So what is it? I see. Vampire in its lair. Okay, the spawns are less. The big vampire. Um, what characters are battling the vampires? How many are there? Do you have like a tank character and some range damage? Ooh, are you still on? Fighter, ranger, cleric. Ah, that is a very nice standard party. I have played with that party several times. I was usually the cleric. I was going to suggest level 5, actually. Let's see, what? Okay, so who is checking with our DM? I can't because I'm doing not relaxing, cementing parts that don't fit together. Trying to remember. Ooh, CR12. Oh my. Yeah, you might need to wait. So when you get a response, can you post it? Our DM is available, but not in chat. Yeah, these two parts. I don't know if you can see this, but the two parts The two parts of this bracket are not the same size. Yeah. What you need, I can't remember at what level the wizard and the cleric get new spells. You know, at a certain level, like around level 7 or 8, they get some really pretty powerful stuff. And so it might need to wait until then. I don't know what I'm going to do with this. Look, seriously, look. The two halves. The two halves are not the same size. Oh my, oh my. It's like they were just, I don't know. This is going to take a lot of manipulation to make this work. Oh, yeah, that's bad. So, yeah, I think it's going to have to wait. If who do you know at what level the new spells come in? I haven't played a magic user in so long that I don't remember. I know that at a certain level, they really they get like almost OP'd. Yeah, do your players know that they're going to encounter a vampire? Because if they have that suspicion, then when they select their new spells when they level up, sorry, itchy eyes. When they select their new spells as they level up, they might pick the ones that would work for that. So I guess it depends on if you want to get them prepared for it or not. Of course, there's a boss hiding in the dungeon. Okay, well that's cool. Right. So they'll prepare for whatever they can prepare for. They won't necessarily know what it is. It sounds like a pretty cool encounter, though. It sounds like you're really setting something up that will be a lot of fun for them and maybe really challenging. So much of it too, the random part of it does actually make a big difference. We when we were at low level, our DM set up these what she thought were just like, okay, I mean, this is just going to be a boring little fight. It was almost like we were overpowering a bunch of gnolls or something. And my character, well, me as a player, has this tendency to roll threes, and so our party was almost destroyed by what was supposed to just be a little bit of a sideline, just a little fun thing as we were walking through the forest, so we could pick up some loot from the corpses. But it sounds like it'll be pretty fun and challenging. Yeah, that's a good point, Who is that sometimes the DM just, needs to save the party so that the game can go on. For some reason, um, our party's combat in our game always messes up the DM, messes Alexis up. It's either that we roll lots of threes, okay, and we almost get destroyed by something that should have been nothing. Yeah, you don't. You just. Yeah, I think our DM actually had to send in, call in the cavalry, kind of, wants to save us from our old bad rolls. On the other hand, she had this hugely elaborate, you know, boss that would practically kill 2/3 of our party, and we all just started rolling 20s and getting critical hits, and the combat turned out really differently in the other direction. So you always have to be prepared for that. Thanks, Sue. That's a really good point. The point of the game is to play a fun game, and not to just be a rules stickler. The rules are there to keep the game interesting and fair. Not there to just destroy people. So thanks for pointing that out. DM sometimes makes exceptions. We're doing a show, okay, which is a little bit different than just playing a game. Because we're trying to entertain an audience as well, and so sometimes interesting innovations will happen. Sometimes there'll just be some interesting variations on things, just to make sure that the show is working well. Just cleaning up these little astronaut figures. I'm going to prime them tonight or tomorrow. And then they get painted white, so I might just actually prime them and paint them the white color. And then there's detail on them, like the connectors for the different ventilation and electrical systems and things. The model makers got this wrong, of course. When I looked it up, the suits that they used inside the command module only had one set of connectors, and they've got two on here. And the moon suit had two very prominent sets of connectors, and they're just barely visible on here at all. So I'm not sure quite what I'll do to make it look right. And then the pilot of the LEM, the one that sits inside the LEM, doesn't have any connectors at all on their suits. So let's just say that this model is not 100% historically accurate. Okay. Wow. Like these pieces here, these brackets for the reaction control jets on the LEM, these are the worst constructed pieces I have ever seen. I have never seen pieces of a model where one side like that was so totally different in size than the other. And it's not that it can't be fixed. It can be, and it will be. But wow, really, really, really badly done, model maker. Very poorly done. At least it looks like the seam's closed from the cementing together. So I'm just going to spend forever fixing those. What I've got now is about a half hour before break, and I'm going to take the time. I've got 16 of these tiny little rocket nozzles, and they came off the trees, and each one of them has a little bit of plastic on either side of the nozzle, and those little bits of plastic need to be taken off. It's a file to do that. They're right down at the bottom. And the nozzle rounded off as well as I can. Take a little, after I'm done with all of these, I'm going to take some sandpaper and polish it a little bit because they're going to be painted metallic. So this is pretty tedious. Tedious to do and tedious to watch, but it's all part of it. And I think this is just true of plastic models that if you were to watch somebody who did this like professionally, who was a master model maker, you would find that they spend a lot of their time fixing the parts. You know, the plastic parts that come with the model are kind of like a guideline to the part. You know, they're not. They don't work the way they come out of the box. And these brackets here that hold the reaction control jets, these fit into these slots. Okay. They are going to require so much work to make them usable. And fortunately, they're small enough that flaws in them will not be too obvious. Yeah, I'm working over the box. Okay. Even though I'm getting plastic dust in it, which I don't really want to do. I'm working over the box because just like I dropped it. And it's real easy to lose these because they're really tiny. The only good thing is that they're white and the floor is dark. Well, most of it's got a rubber mat on it. Anyway, if I can get these cleaned up, then I'm going to paint the rocket nozzles after break so that we can get a little bit of relaxing painting in, actually, some actual relaxing painting in kind of during this stream. Why not? The opportunity presents itself. Have fun with your campaign, and thanks for joining in on chat. Go back and tell us how it went. Yeah, I'm just looking at the microphone display. There's a little bar that moves when the microphone picks something up. And we have a couple of dogs in the house, and they're barking, but the microphone filters it out, so you can't hear it. The filter on this microphone works really well, but there are some sounds that I think, it'd be kind of fun if you heard, like when I use the vortex spinner to mix up some paint. I think it'd be fun if you could hear that. Or when I was sawing, you could hear little tiny saw blade saw sounds. You could hear the dogs barking. But you can't, because the filter works extremely well. And it filters out everything, I guess, pretty much but my voice. Great, 2 out of 16. I'm not going to finish these before the break, but I will finish them after the break, and I will get the painting. I'm going to do the painting for sure. Maybe I should. If I try to rush it, I'll mess it up. I've learned that the hard way over and over and over and over and over again. That impatience, being impatient, leads to tears. It leads to oops. Yeah. And sometimes it leads to a major oops. Not just a little minor oops, but a major oops. And I don't really want that. So the major oops here is if I file it too deep, and then these things get out of round. These little nozzles will show, not as much as they do on the service module. Okay. They get painted a really dark metallic. And on the service module, they show up against the white of the module skin. And so, yeah, flaws in those would have been very obvious. These are going to be showing up against a color that's almost the same color. The lunar module gets painted a dark metallic. It's not painted white like the rest of the exterior of this model is. So I was able to find the right color, or a color that was close to the right color, at least in terms of matching what it is on the box top. Painting instructions just say metallic gray. Okay, well, great. That could be, what it means is not silver, but it could mean anything otherwise. They stopped barking, which means that whatever it was set them off has ended. Oh yeah, Jetsons and Flintstones, they were just really kind of disappointing. But I guess, when they first came out, it was pretty standard humor for the time. It wasn't anything like startling or controversial or interesting. It was just kind of like, oh yeah, that's the trope. Mother-in-law jokes, stereotypic female housekeeper jokes, trying to get away to see a sporting event when you're supposed to be doing something with your spouse having to do with your kids. It's more important to see a football game than go to a PTA meeting, right? And then, trying to get away with it and then getting caught. It was not, let's just say it was not very challenging. The humor was not very challenging. But, it was the times. But the thing that was disappointing was the quality of the animation. Let's just say it was not Disney feature film level. It was they took a lot of shortcuts in terms of the animation. A lot of a figure standing still, and the only thing that's moving is its mouth. So that the number of cells, the individually painted cells, was minimized. But then, of course, you have to remember that they still had to do it that way. Okay, these were still all hand painted individual cells, and there was a cell for like, I don't know, 12 a second or something. There's a lot of them. And they were producing this show a half hour, well, minus the commercial time. It's like 20 minutes worth of animation every week. So that was pretty demanding on the staff. So of course, if they could take some shortcuts, they would. And if they could use the same thing from one show to the next, all the better. Definitely the backgrounds. It made sense to reuse the backgrounds. And, even in terms of the story, it made sense because they go back, like there's Fred's house and Barney's yard and the slate quarry. So yeah, that there were shortcuts in the animation just made a huge amount of sense that they would do that. So I won't give them demerits for that. Especially, given, like I said, it had to be every week. So the production schedule was probably pretty hectic and tight. I give these getting them pretty close. I'm going to, since I'm doing white on white, I'm holding it over the box, and the box has a paper towel on the bottom of it. I'll be seeing all the flaws. I'm trying to feel some of it with my fingernail before I paint them, and I put them against the darker background, just to catch, if they're just major problems remaining. Like I said, I painted these before, so I can't say exactly that I know what I'm doing, but I can say I've done it before with success. So I'm going to try to repeat the thing that worked last time, just in terms of how they're held and how they're painted. Okay, well, I've got 10 minutes yet. It just feels like these are going really slowly, and they probably are, but tiny. They're hard to hold on to. You have to be careful not to flat spot. I don't want to flat spot the rocket nozzles, right? I want to get the protrusions off, the obvious flaws. Almost half done with them. So, of course, these are really critical. I mean, they're really tiny, okay, and they seem simple. The reaction control jets. Pretty much there's quadruple redundancy I mean, you probably the spacecraft could probably lose more than half of these and still be able to successfully maneuver. But that just goes to show just how critical they were to the mission, because these are the things that would like rotate the whole Apollo component, or in this case the lunar module. And the rotation is important because, you know, if you're landing on the moon, you want to point it in the right direction at the right angle. If you're trying to dock back with the command module, you want the hatches to line up. And these little rockets, these little rocket motors are the things that did that. You're in space, you want to kind of slowly rotate your spacecraft so that it doesn't overheat on one side, you know, the sunny side. These are the little rocket things that made that happen. So that's why there's so many of them, I think, is to, you know, if you're using all of them, they probably didn't, but they wanted to just make sure that there was sufficient redundancy so that if for some reason one or more of them failed to operate, the spacecraft wouldn't be in danger. Anyway, you know, as I've been working on this, there have been some parts that needed a lot of work, but nothing close to these brackets that hold half of the reaction control rockets in place. Those are just abysmal. And I really, really hope that I can get them to a point where they presentable, at least. There's enough of them left that I can get them to hold these parts. It won't be easy to get them all to adhere, especially since some of the alignment pins, they're gone. Okay. So I'll have to be like free-handed into place. That well. But there's a lot of plastic, so I can file things down and get them lined up. At least the big pieces don't have too many flaws on them. Not that I'm going to have to go over them and make sure that there aren't any real obvious problems. They look like a bunch of hairline cracks in the plastic. I don't know if you can see them as I rotate it. I don't feel it though. Hopefully they won't show. It feels like it's taking a long time to do. You know, and I look at the one that's assembled. Model kits always have an assembled model on the box top, right? And on detail on the sides. And this is no different. It does. You know, and it's just impeccably done. None of the seams show anywhere. The detail painting is perfect. The parts all fit together. So it just must be that whoever does these things, whoever the master modelers that make these things for the box tops, and spend huge amounts of time doing this kind of stuff. They probably do it much more quickly because they know what they're doing. They've done it many times and they're good at it and their fingers work and they've got the perfect tools, that kind of thing. You know, this model is not going to turn out. The one on the box top is like a solid A, and I'm hoping at least for a solid B on this. So far that I'm hitting those marks. Hi, Ole, how you doing? Thanks for joining in. I am working on the Lunar Excursion module, and if I were permitted to use naughty words on this stream, I would be using all of the ones I know to describe the quality of the parts that were molded for this. I'm working on these little nozzles. You probably recall these from the service module, the 16 attitude control jets. And, it's the same issue here. They were attached to the trees, and so there's little bits of plastic adhering to them that need to be cleaned off. But the brackets to which they attach, I'll show you again. It's just, they were amazingly poorly made. I mean, I've never seen anything quite so bad. Even the worst of the problems with the submarine didn't come close to the ones here. Just finish this one nozzle here, or at least get it close to being finished. So the problem are these brackets that each one holds 4 reaction control jets, one on either end and one on either side, but you can see that the two halves are not the same size. They don't match up. I mean, they're not even close. They're like almost a 32nd of an inch off. They're definitely a 64th. They are way, way bad. And so that's going to require a good deal of shaping and sanding. The larger ones that go into the side here, somehow these attach. I'm not sure quite how. I think like this. Maybe, I'm not sure. I'll have to look at the instructions to see how these are actually supposed to attach. I guess they go in like this. I don't know. It doesn't look good. But maybe that's how they go. Like I said, I'm going to have to follow the instructions to see how these are supposed to fit. Yeah, these were pretty bad, but the other ones are really bad. Great. Yeah, no, I'd been very carefully keeping them. They're not identical, and I've been very carefully keeping them separate from each other. And then I just messed up. So who knows what I'm going to have to do to get them, play around with them until I get the right ones in the right places. Okay, well, I screwed that up. I will be very careful and label them. And then I moved them around and didn't. Okay, well, one on one side, one on the other. There's a 50-50 chance of getting it right. And if it does make a difference in terms of how they fit, it should be pretty obvious which one goes on which side. At least I hope so when the time comes. Well, because the parts don't fit, they don't fit with each other and they don't fit into the model. This is going to be another one of those just assembly challenges to try to make it look like it's put together the way it's supposed to be put together. Anyway, I just made an oops there. That was unfortunate. But then again, as I said, there's only two ways they can go. So one will be the right way and one won't. And until I cement them in, I can try different things until they fit. Okay, well, it's break time, but I've got 4 left. So I'm going to finish these. I'm going to start my break a little late, but I will need to take a break, and I am going to make every effort, and you know that I'll fail. I'm making every effort to keep the break to like 20 minutes or so that I can come back and paint, do a double check on these little nozzles, to make sure that they're, at least to my eye, which is not very good, but at least to my eye, they look okay. And then I'm going to paint the nozzles so that I will get some relaxing painting done during the relaxing painting show. On Friday, I'll be doing more parts manipulation. Get this half of the Lunar Excursion module moving along. This is the ascent stage. This is the easy one of the two because it doesn't have all those little folding landing struts. I certainly wish I hadn't messed up those, that I'd kept them separate from each other in a way so I knew which one went on which side. I was sort of test fitting them, and neither one seemed to fit on either side. So I'm not sure how this will actually end up working. We'll see. If there's time during this stream, I'll pull out the instructions and play around with it a little bit so I don't have nightmares about trying to fit parts together. I actually do have those occasionally since I started this stream. Occasionally I have nightmares about what will happen during the next stream because of just the way some of these models are put together or fail to be put together. It was happening with the escape tower, with that whole lattice work that needed to be assembled. I would have dreams about doing different assembly techniques. And of course, they were dreams and none of it worked. It was, it was just that sort of thing. So I guess that's why we call it so relaxing, is because it disturbs my sleep. Thanks for joining in, Ole. I really appreciate you dropping in when you can. I know that you have like the world's most ridiculous schedule in terms of everything that you need to be doing. But those of you who might be watching this who haven't checked out Ole's, go to Ole Brager and on YouTube, and he does amazing stuff, just all sorts of modeling stuff that I find fascinating. And he has the coolest little jigsaw that I don't need for the stuff I'm doing, but for the stuff he does, it's really cool to watch that. I'll just say that. It's just like a big one, but it's miniature. Doing little miniature things instead of full-size things is pretty cool. These needle files, I ended up using these all the time, and they can be kind of careful to leave scratch marks, on the surface. So I don't want to be filing all over where I don't need to be. And then I can use some really fine sandpaper or emery cloth to kind of polish these. And I'm going to try. It's hard to do it because they're just so tiny and they're hard to hold on to and put them up against the abrasive. After I'm done with this one, well, I will tell you what I'm going to do next. And then I'm going to take a break, and then I'll come back and do the thing that I said I was going to do before the break. So I'm doing this over the box so that when I dropped it like that, if I'd been doing it over the cardboard, it would have hit the cardboard and would have bounced on it and dropped on the floor and disappeared forever. I had this happen before. This is so weird and annoying. And this definitely has to come out. There's a piece of plastic on the inside. All right. So the next step is to count them. 60. Yay, they're all still here. Is I'm going to take them and put them against a dark background like this. I'm going to do it in the box. And this will show me, like here. It's really kind of hard to see, but you can see against the black background like this, if there are still little protuberances of plastic that will be visible, like right here. Okay, that's going to be visible. Feel it, get it there. After it's painted, and I want to give that just a little bit more filing That's what I'm going to do that with all of these. I'm not going to mess with them too much, just to get any really significant ones taken care of. And then I'm going to polish them a little bit as much as I can with some fine grained sandpaper. And then I'm going to paint the outsides. Okay. And then I'm going to look at these and shake my head in woe about how bad they are as pieces, and how I hope I can manipulate them so that they are okay. So yeah, about quarter after. Like I will, in fact, make an effort. Whether I succeed in that effort or not, I don't know. I'm curious here. So this goes to the front. Supposed to attach like this. Yeah. See, this goes like this, and then these go like that, leaving just these massive gaps. Now, I don't know what to do about that. I mean, after I clean these up, after these are attached, I really feel like I should fill in those gaps somewhat. They're just huge. I mean, the part goes in, but wow, it looks really crappy. Okay, well, after they're cleaned up and I play around with them some, and I see how they fit into these, I may end up trying to fill in some of that gap. Do that. It's just not working. These are supposed to be like that. It's supposed to be. I'm going to have to look at the pictures, but the way this looks is that these are like at an angle, and the way this looks is that they're supposed to be like this. Okay, so that these rockets are like in perpendicular and in parallel to the LEM, and they're not. They're like at a serious angle. Okay. Okay, that's just. It's just confusing as all get out. Anyway, yeah, there's just some issues here. Some issues I am finding with the LEM. I don't know. Maybe that's the way it is. all of these things are just sort of like non-perpendicular. And there's no really good I guess they are. I guess they are just kind of at an angle looking at this. Okay. Well, enough moaning and complaining and whining about parts that don't fit and whatever. I am going to take my break, come back from the break, and give these a once over, just to make sure that there aren't any really significant and obvious flaws. And then I will get this color of paint, and paint the outsides of those nozzles. I'm going to need these things. These things are the things into which the little sticks poke. It holds them in place for me. Worked last time. Maybe it'll work this time. So I got the paint. I've got tools that need to be put away. That. What I need are the little sticks. I need to find those. So during break, I will look around for the things that I don't have, that I know are here somewhere. And I'll be back and working on these little nozzles. Let's see how that goes. And then if there's still time, I'll continue working on cleaning up the rest of these bits. The rest of these bits that need plastic removed. So see you in a bit. Okay, well, the break is over. What's this all about? And let's see. Now I'm going to do the things that I said I was going to do. At least that's the intent anyway. We'll try this, see how it goes. And the thing I said I was going to do was take these 16 rocket nozzles, use this dark background that came with the new little saw thing that I got. Okay. And I'm going to put the rocket nozzle on that and look at it to see if there are still any obvious flaws in the basically I'm looking for little tabs that stick out. That one's okay. This one's got just a little bit more. You can just kind of see it there. Irregularity. It won't be obvious, but you never. Oh, this one's pretty bad. There's still remnants of the sprue on that. Be careful to not take too much off. Done messing around with, trying to get them so that they look okay. And I'm going to paint the outsides of the nozzles. These nozzles are painted in a two-part process. One is the outside, painted steel, and then the inside, which shows I paint black. And the ones that I did for the service module ended up looking pretty decent. Yeah, it was an okay process. It came okay. Why is this just not? Just sometimes things just don't go. Yeah. So far, though, the problems that I've been running into aren't things that I did. They're the things that the model manufacturer did in terms of the brackets onto which these little jets attach. And they're just not very well done. They're very poorly done. In fact, two of them, the two brackets are so bad that it'll probably take like an entire stream to salvage them. Seriously. They're just really not, they're very, very badly done. Catching up something there. There's like a little divot in it. You can't really see it, so there it is what it is. Well, before the break, I muttered on a little bit about the Flintstones and the Jetsons, and anyway, I got to see those a couple episodes over the weekend when we were watching television in the place we were at, and they were, yeah, very amazingly stereotypic humor of the 1960s. Yeah, mother-in-law jokes, men not being able to do housework, trying to sneak off to a football game rather than going to the PTA meeting for your kid. Just, they reflected the times. So there's that. I guess if you're ever interested in, seeing living history, just catch some old episodes of television from the 60s and you'll see what the world was like then. It was, in some ways different than it is now. In other ways, you can see where some of the stuff we're dealing with comes from. And of course, everything came from things before that. I was I've been reading a history by a guy named Hobsbawm. Wrote a series of 4 books, starting like with the Age of Enlightenment and moving through the mercantile, the development of capitalism as an economic system, and the Age of Empire, which, we think of empires, but it didn't last very long, really, not the real one. There was an Age of Conquest before that, but quite the empirical kind of thing where one country ran another country. The latest one I read was from World War II on, and it was just kind of fascinating how everything from the 60s and 70s you know, the music. What can you say about old music, though? You know, I can't sing it, I can't hum it. You know, but what I can say about music is, and I found this kind of interesting, right? Is that when we were growing up, right, in the 50s and 60s, when I was growing up with my brother and my sisters came later. So I was growing up. One thing we didn't hear very much is there really wasn't much music being played like the 20s and 30s. Okay, you know, why am I saying that? Well, that was only 20 or 30 years before that, and the music just wasn't played. It was gone. Occasionally there'd be a station that would still play big band music, but it was kind of unusual. And yet now music from the 60s, and here we are like 60 years later, right? From the 50s and 60s, 60 years later, it still has influence. It's, you know, the music in the 50s and 60s was not heavily influenced at all by the music from the 20s and 30s, but yet subsequent to that, you know, people still know who the Beatles and the Rolling Stones are. And I say that kind of weirdly, you know, because it is kind of weird. It's stuff 60, 70 years old, some of it, and 60 years old, 50 years old anyway. But if you do the same thing in the 50s, okay, and you say, well, what kind of music from 40 or 50 years ago was influencing that? And you were talking about music from 1910, and it just wasn't. Not to the same extent. And I think a lot of things kind of like happen like that. I'll just say that there's some parallels with other stuff. You know, there were like I talk about airplanes a lot because I was really into airplanes as a kid, but you know, just so in 1940 or 1943, just 40 years after Kitty Hawk, you just look at the difference between, you know, the kinds of planes that were flying commercially and militarily back in 1943 in mid-war, comparing those to the Wright Flyer, right? And you go 40 years out, 40 years back from here, and we're still flying some of the same planes. I mean, not just planes like the planes that we were flying in 1983 or 84. Okay. I mean, in some cases, we're flying the same planes we were flying in 1984. The Air Force is still flying planes that they were flying in 1974. So it was like even though we talk about how rapidly things are changing now, and in some ways, you know, they are, but not like the kind of changing that was going on between 1900 and 1950. You know, that 50 years just saw all sorts of massive changes. And you look at the difference between 1970 and 2020, and you just, other than, you know, TVs are flat screen now, and we've got little screens we can carry around with us. other than the explosion of flat screens. Not that much. Communication is a lot faster, but I'm not sure necessarily better. Granted, if you want to communicate with someone, and you wanted to do it in writing, it took like 4 days from the time you composed a letter till the time they got it. Sometimes maybe 2 or 3 days, as opposed to instantaneous. But, okay. But old music, yeah, it's just like music between 1900 and 1950 and the changes compared to the music between 1980 and 2020, there's just no comparison about the rate of change. So let's see if these sticks work on these rockets. They worked on the ones that were their twins. Yeah, I mean, it'll hold well enough. So that's how this works, is this little stick goes in the bottom. And then I paint this, and then I stick the little stick in the sticky tack, like that. And then I end up getting paint on my fingers because these are like 1/4 of an inch shorter. If these were 1/4 of an inch longer, they would be better, but they're not. And I don't feel like cutting 16 more little toothpick pieces just to do that. But there was a big innovation in the music. I think in the 60s especially. If you listen to people singing songs before, like the 1960s, it was like there was no emotion in the lyrics. I mean, what I mean by that, I think if you listened, you would pick it up right away. It was just you just sing the lyrics. The music would be there, but then starting in the 60s, and the singers started, adding, just putting emotion into it. I don't know how else to say it. Sometimes not in a good way. Okay. I mean, you can get, it seemed like people were getting really way overwrought about leaving the cake out in the rain. You listen to that song with MacArthur Park. It's, yeah, I mean, that sometimes it was just carried out to excess, but there was this sense in earlier music that the lyrics were just kind of like overlaid on top of the music. Not really an important part of it. It's very odd when you kind of listen to that. And that changed in the 1960s. That was a big change. Not always for the better. It wasn't always great, but tweezers that I had out that I didn't put away, and since I didn't put them away, I can't find them. Lovely. Oh, there. Almost always find things where you left them. Yeah, I guess it'd be better if I rotated it like this. Move some of these things around. Not so much that you can see it, but that there's room for me to work in. So astronaut guys are just getting bounced all over the place. Okay, so there's this pile of little sticks, and there's a pile of little rocket motors, and this is going to go in here as well, because you never know if it's going to get dropped, where it's going to get dropped. Getting it dropped is not a good thing. So I'm going to be doing some relaxing painting here. that really old? Okay. Again, the I should have learned my lesson from having done this many times before. Opening this bottle of paint, sometimes it splashes and then gets on one's hands. Yuck. So the reason I have these tweezers is because the stick is too small, and I'm going to use the tweezers to stick it into the sticky tack. At least that I'm going to try that. And I'm not sticking them in the sticky tack first because there's going to be 8 of them on there, and that pretty much fills the space. So I want to make sure I get just remembering that. Why is there paint all over the stick? Well, because I want to paint the bottom of the nozzle. Make sure that that's painted. So here it is. This is relaxing painting happening right here on the relaxing painting, the Dyson Dungeons stream. Where it was white before, like these, and now oh yeah, if you're playing classical guitar, yeah. There used to be classic guitar players, right? And then there aren't any. Back in the day when guitars played notes, that's another thing that kind of changed. Is that you'd almost think that guitars were invented like in the 1950s because well anyway that's another huge change that happened with music is bands did not have guitars. Bands had brass and sometimes strings, but mainly they were brass bands and brass and woodwinds. Occasionally a bass. I mean, not a bass guitar, but a bass. Sometimes a piano. But the use of guitars in music, really in popular music. Is there a question? Question was you might think that guitars weren't invented until then because other than classical guitar music, which was usually not be even folk songs, that kind of thing. Guitars feature in westerns, but I'm not sure that cowboys actually were out there playing guitar on the old prairie. They were not like the most common instrument used. They were not the most commonly instrument used in popular music, or much at all. I don't think. I don't think they were just guitars were just not really much of a thing that I know of. I don't remember them being much of a thing at all in music until the 1950s, really. And then with the advent of amplified guitars, electric guitars, as we used to call them. I don't know if they still call them that anymore. They probably just call them guitars because, like, who has an acoustic guitar anymore, right? Except who plays more classical guitar. Anyway, that was a huge change in the music scene. As the oldsters called it. Oh, it's a guitar band. I'm not even sure that it, I guess maybe it came over with, when white musicians stole black music and created rock and roll from blues. I don't know, maybe guitars came over with that? Because there were blues guitars players. Because it was an easy instrument for, for one to carry. If you didn't, the early blues stuff was not like a big blues band kind of thing. But you had percussion and the guitar and a harp player, a harp being a harmonica. Yeah, but I was just thinking about that, the music up until at least popular music among white audiences. Rock and roll came out. It really was a huge and dramatic difference, not just so much in the music, but in the instruments used to play it. Compared to, recorded radio, we'll call it radio music from before then. Oh, that's a problem there. I've got one that's not good. Let me see if I can fix it. It's not good in the sense of it's got just looking at it from the side. Okay. If you're not looking at it from the side, it's not bad, but looking at it from the side, there's a significant protuberance here. Like a ridge. No, that might be okay. Repaint it. I'll remind everybody that my secret to model making is that when it's displayed, the secret is not in the construction as much as it's in the display. And the display needs to be a minimum of 18 inches from the viewer. Okay. Definitely no closer than that. And under fairly dim light. And the models on a scale of 1 to 10 picks up like 2 full points, 2 full appearance points, I would say. Benefiting from the distance and the dim lighting. That can be really important. It just looks a lot better when you can't see it that well. It's the way it is. When the model when the model is adequate, okay, like I'm trying to shape these and get some of the obvious flaws off. Perfect, they're not uniform, they're not polished. There's still like little ridges and marks and things on some of these nozzles. If you were to look at them under bright light with a 2x magnifier, it would be awful. So unless you are like a super duper professional display level model maker, and if you are, you're not watching this. But unless you're that kind of level of skill, and that if you build a model, you do not let people look at it through a 2x magnifier under bright light. I'll not do that. I do that sometimes when I'm painting minifigs. I'll use that so I can see them well enough so that I can paint them. Okay. So I'll use it in my modeling process, but I would definitely not permit anyone to view my models that way. Say things like, that's very fragile. Don't get too close. And that wouldn't be to warn them away because I was afraid they were going to break it. No, that would be to keep them at a distance sufficient so that the flaws were not that obvious. Yeah, that would be how that would work. Okay, so I know that looks kind of weird, but it holds them in place in a way that's good here. Looking around to make sure that I didn't miss any spots. I probably did, but if I rotate this, my odds of catching it at this stage are improved. That's just a reflection. And I want to make sure the bottoms of the nozzles are painted also. Okay, there's that. I can't let these get too close to each other. There's magnets in the base and they repel each other and pretty much just send each other flying. And when they're flying, pieces can fly off. And if pieces fly off, they can disappear. Lose pieces. Yeah, the paint is this one has finger oils on it, I guess. So a really good modeler would not only have taken the time to prime these, but would have taken the time to wash them all, like with denatured alcohol, and then prime them, and then probably worn gloves or something, so not getting finger oil on them. But I didn't do that because I don't know. No, mainly because I didn't want to bother priming them because I didn't want to lose the pieces by having the spray blow them away because they're so tiny and light. I probably could have cleaned them. But I didn't because I wanted to do some relaxing painting here on the Relaxing Painting Show. And also because I didn't think of it until now. That's my story, and I want to stick with it. I just didn't think of it. So what would have been an obvious and irreplaceable step for people who really were good at this just turned into an oversight on my part. That's why this model shall remain forever a B-level model. Meaning that on a grading scale, you know, the old, I don't know if they even use them anymore, you know, the A through F grading scale. Yeah. I want to get a solid B on my model here. So far, I think I'm achieving that, at least with the parts that I've finished so far. There have been little bits of things that have been A level, you know, at least an A minus. I think I've scored like an A minus on a couple of things that I've done. Nothing, no real good solid A's. On the other hand, I don't think I've lapsed into C range. I'm not trying. I don't want to paint the insides of these. I want to get it was just noticing the tops of these nozzles could end up showing a little bit. Really dumb. Anyway, yeah, the cement I'm going to use is going to dissolve the paint, but that probably will be okay. There's just nothing I'm going to be able to do about it. The contact surface, the contact points between these nozzles and where they attach on the brackets are really, really tiny. And even though there's sort of like alignment pins on the brackets, some of them are gone. They weren't molded on very well. And when I tried to clean out the parts by sanding them to get them to fit together without a huge seam, they're disappeared. Some of them are too big and this doesn't fit over them and they need to be taken off. Let's just say that the alignment pins are kind of worthless when it comes to these bits. So these will have to be very carefully put into place. I tried using tweezers with the other ones, but they're round, and the tweezers just sort of, well, actually, I just had one kind of like fly off the tweezers. You know, almost lost it. So it's kind of like put a little dollop of cement on there and a little dollop of cement on the thing to which it's going to attach. And these new cements work like contact cement. More than anything, it's kind of interesting. And the cement sticks to itself and it holds pretty well. It sets up more quickly than I thought it would. And so I'll have to hold each one of these in place, I don't know, for a minute or two. It'll seem interminable to me, maybe to you too. I don't want them like sagging. Anyway, I'm quite a long way away from installing these onto the lunar module. I'll just say that. So be concerned about how well or poorly that will go when the time comes to do it. These will be among the very last bits put on to the model. Whoa, okay. That was not good. That popped out of my tweezers and flew all the way across the workbench, and it is now somewhere over there. And I hope and it's painted dark, right? I hope it stayed on the toothpick because then that will increase my ability to find it. But I'm going to have this is a huge oops. This is like a gigantic major oops. And I need to fix it by finding those pieces. And that was a totally unexpected, gigantic, potentially disastrous oops. I am going to have to leave here and go over there and hope I can find the part that went flying. I'm going to keep narrating. I know it flew over and it hit the workbench. It hit here. It continued on its way. Oh man, there it is. Good 5 feet away. Thing flew at least 5 feet before it landed. The lucky part is, so there was anything lucky about what happened, but the lucky part was that it could see the direction in which it flew. Okay. I mean, it could have flown in any direction, but at least I could see where it went. So I was able to follow its path. Huge disaster. Huge disaster, mostly averted. I couldn't, that was like, oh God, no. Tweezers clipped shut, and the thing just went a long way. I'm doing the same thing here. I'm checking to make sure that the bottoms of the nozzles are painted, and I'm rotating it to check to see if there are any spots where the paint didn't quite adhere and that need to be repainted. And I'll probably do that before the next step. The next step is going to be to take them off these little sticks and paint the inside of the nozzle flat black, which sort of seems like an excessive attention to detail, but you know, that's the way I'm getting this to be a B quality model as opposed to like a C plus or a solid C. It's by doing, you know, even if there's maybe some flaws in the plastic parts, you know, the painting, the detail painting moves it up half a grade. That's what I'm claiming anyway. Okay, what have I got, like a half hour left? I still want to talk about old music. Probably can do that. I never really paid much attention to music most of the time. There was a kind of a window, you know, between must have been like 63 or 64 or something when the kids I was going to school with started listening to music. And I think, and yeah, transistor radios came out. So you could carry a radio with you. You can imagine these little plastic radios. We were not rich kids, but yeah, the radios came out and you could carry it around and get kind of tinny music because they had tiny little speakers and the technology just wasn't the same as it is now. So let's just say that the speakers were inexpensive and small, It did not have a good bass tone, but that's for sure. Now transistor radios came out, and so kids would carry that around. They could play the music that was on the radio. And so, yeah, we started paying attention to that, like in 7th and 8th grade. And, and then some more serious music started coming out in the late 60s. And I kind of listened to, music that was on the radio, and we bought a lot of LPs. And a lot of those from music back in the day. And then disco came out, and I stopped listening. I would say that, on a scale of 1 to 10, my knowledge of music during a decade, or like 1 decade maybe, is on a like maybe a 5. And that any time before or after that, it's like a 1.4, just next to nothing. And then contemporary music now, I just haven't been paying attention to it. So I can't say whether it's good or bad, or whether I like it or not. Can't say anything about it because I haven't really been paying attention to it, haven't been listening to it. Okay, well, I got this brush mostly clean, but not clean enough. The metallic paint sometimes is just hard to get out of the brush, especially a soft bristled one like that. So I'm going to use some isopropyl alcohol and push things around on 2 square feet of space that I'm given for this. I guess maybe I have 3 square feet that I'm given on the top of the workbench here for this stream. I might be able to make another square foot if I cleaned it up and move some things out of the way. But there's always something else to do. Okay. What have I done? What I have done is I've painted the outsides of all of these attitude control rockets. And on Friday, I will see if they need any touching up. And I'll do that. But otherwise, I'm going to paint the insides of those black so that they'll be the very last bit that will be put onto this will be the very first bit that's painted. Why in that? I don't know why. That's just how it's going to be. That is the way it's going to be. These little astronaut guys, I am going to prime, and then I'm going to inspect them again to see whether the seams show really badly or not. And if they look okay, I will also paint them white right away. The little astronaut guys will be, maybe I'll do that on Friday, maybe not. We'll see how they look after they've been primed. I think I've cleaned the seams up as, pretty well. I'm just feeling them with my fingernail. But it's going to be really hard to tell until they're primed. Like that. There's a bit more showing there than would be ideal. These came out a little bit better than I expected. The parts did not fit together very well at all. So I put an excess of cement in to, fill the gaps, and then sanded them down. I had to fill, there's still a little pockmark there where it didn't really get filled in, but if I keep people at least 18 inches away and keep the lights dim, that won't show. Yeah, these were other examples of incredibly poorly made. Pieces. Okay, I'll stop playing with those. I'll prime them. I can't, like I said, I can't really tell what else they will need until the priming is done. I have a bunch of cleaning up yet to do on these with file and sandpaper. Hour yet, so I might as well start working on them. They include like this piece. If you can see this up close, you can see that there's this mold mark that runs right down the center. If you can see it or not, no matter how much I rotate it. But basically the mold closed here, top and bottom, and it didn't seal, and it didn't line up even. And so there's like this ridge all the way around the outside of this antenna where there is not supposed to be a ridge. So I'm going to try to get rid of it by very, very lightly filing it. Well, I would probably use sandpaper on this, but it's hard to get, the sandpaper right. And I have to be careful because I don't want to break it to get the excess plastic off without snapping the part. This is looking like that's an attachment point and not just a piece of excess plastic. We'll look at the instruction. It's stuck on my finger. I almost broke it. Wow. Yeah, getting close to the end of the stream here, and things start getting difficult to hold on to and manipulate. So this is supposed to go here. Okay, yeah, there's a little hole there, and the tab on that is supposed to go in, and it does. It goes there. So at least I know how it's supposed to fit. I'm going to keep these now. Can't put them there. That's where I put the stuff I was painting. Putting my fingernail over the edge of this thing because, like I said, there's a ridge on it. The ridge is on it from the two halves of the mold not quite fitting together. And then there is a circle, one of these vicious little circles molded into a very bad place, a visible place on this. One thing I have to decide is the color to paint these antenna. Everything's going to be metallic. This is going to be kind of a dark gray. The rocket nozzles. I think the antennae I will paint a slightly lighter shade. Paint them like aluminum or duraluminum, especially this one. The other antenna like this, I painted the shaft is kind of dark aluminum, and I painted the dish aluminum, and I painted the middle section duraluminum. So there were actually 3 shades of metallic, very close to each other, but still, you could still see the difference. Again, that's kind of detail that maybe is unnecessary, but it moves me from a C plus into B territory on the quality of the model. These, I am filing away the seam that extends all the way around the cone of this. Circle imprinted on it. Yeah, this little part. Okay, one tiny little part just taking a huge amount of time because it's amazingly poorly molded. Not as badly molded as these brackets here, where the two halves are different sizes. It's not that bad, but it's bad enough so that a highly visible part is not good. I need the one with the rounded tip. So that I can have a smaller surface. This piece, I'm going to try to polish it with some sandpaper because it's going to be painted a fairly light metallic color. And the parts that I'm filing are going to have a different texture than the rest. So I've done this before when I've had to use a file to fix a part. I've rubbed the whole thing down with emery cloth or fine grained sandpaper, whichever one I happen to grab. And that way the surface texture is the same over it. This, using this as a background actually was a good thing. This is white on white, so it's really hard to see the flaws. So I'm using my fingernail to identify them. Yeah. As I'm doing this, I'm saying, okay, minimum of 18 inches away and keep the lights dim. And then it will look better than if you were looking at it under a bright light with a 2x magnifier, which I am definitely not going to do. If I can't feel it, it's probably fairly well taken care of. Excuse me. It took like 10 minutes for this one tiny little thing. Circle still shows under the right lighting condition. I don't know what I can do about that. In the molding process, these little circles show up everywhere. And if they're raised above the surface, then they're easy to file down. But when they're indented below the surface like that, you can't even fill them in, really. They're too small to hold filler. But as I've learned, sanding them down leaves, it's not, it leaves a depression in the hole in the model. So it's kind of like, well, it just needs to stay there. And we'll need to pretend that the Apollo engineers decided that they needed little circles scattered around their different modules, just because they needed to do that. But that's down there. That's pretty deep, and there's nothing I can do about it. I could put a little bit of filler in, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure it would look any better. Okay, well, this part's done. I'll put it over. Where are the done parts? Done, way over here. There's one part that's done. Yay. Okay, this one, this is the hatch. Do not cement in place. That's pretty funny. They put instructions on the bottom of the hatch. So the way this works is that when these two parts go together, okay, there needs to be a hatch that goes between the command and the service modules. And this is it. It goes there. Okay. Why not cement it in place? I mean, it just sits there, right? And if you manipulate the model, and it doesn't even fill the space very well. So if you manipulate the model and rotate it around, the thing will just flop out. And I don't understand why it's not supposed to be cemented in place, but it clearly says, do not cement in place. Maybe it's because you can open it and then you can put the little standing astronaut in. I'm not sure. That's just too hilarious. I would sand that off because the Apollo did not say that on their hatch. In fact, they had a hatch that would open, and this one doesn't. But I am going to sand out these circles. Again, these molding circles around the edge. They're just not the way it's supposed to look. It's going to be it like this. And I think there's enough plastic there that I can get rid of the circles. Yeah, and it'll be thinner, but it won't disappear. Getting closer to not being there. Again, these are molding flaws and not part of the model. It didn't have stupid little circles all around it like this. So this is starting to get pretty thin. I'll go a little bit further. So not only are there stupid circles, but they're pretty deep. Yeah, they're really deep. They're just not going away. So I'm going to have to pretend that those are like attachment points or something. At least at least they're kind of at uniform depths now. But I don't want to go any further because this will get too thin. So that's a pain. Do not cement in place. I'm going to look at the instructions and see what the deal is with that. Not. I mean, they really make it clear that that's not supposed to be cemented. They could make it fit better then, but they didn't. Oh, sure. This. Why not? Let's work on this. This is not too bad. There's not too much awful with this. Okay. Just some issues around the edge, kind of. I mean, just a little bit of excess plastic around the edges, which makes it look non-uniform. There's that's probably what was attached to the tree. Like another one of those. What I'm learning here, so when I did the submarine, there was a lot of detail on it, but it was clear that it was like representational and not accurate. So there was like weird little details, like the toilets in the in the bathroom, the head they call it, right? I mean, so those were molded in, and they actually kind of looked like toilets. And some of the instrument panels had dials on them that had hands and little indicator buttons and stuff, and that was kind of fun to paint those. Yeah, and the detail was worthwhile. It was kind of cool, but it was clear that it was like not designed to be 100% historically accurate, but it was designed to represent the things that were there. I had higher expectations for the detail in this model in terms of historical accuracy. Again, if you're 18 inches away and the light is fairly dim, it's pretty close. It's actually an impressive model. It's large. It has all of the components of the Apollo stack. The fairing for the lunar module itself, the command module, service module, things you don't get in all of the kits. Not all kits contain those kinds of those components. Many of them were just, you either got the lunar module or you got the command module. Very, very rarely would you get something like the escape tower. So this kit is really cool in that sense, but on the other hand, it's also disappointing in that some of the parts are molded badly, the fit isn't very good, and at times it's like, this sort of barely represents the thing that we're doing. So and then it leaves you with these little dilemmas like this. Like this fits on here. It wasn't just molded in, but it wasn't. So this fits on here, and it holds this antenna. And that's all well and good. I mean, there. So that fits, right? Let's stay cleaned up. This one says do cement this, but I'm going to not cement this because I kind of like the way it flops around. But when you put this in, okay, there's this gap here between this part and that part. and that's okay. Do I put this in and then before I paint it, fill the gap? I could fill that gap in, I guess. And do that, or do I just say that's how it was assembled? I don't know. But that's the kind of thing that this model does. Is it leaves those kinds of things there. And now, why are there bits of plastic under here? Okay, there isn't one there. I think that's just excess stuff. Just there's some here. There's bump. There isn't any bump like that on the other side. There is, is there? Yeah, there is, but it's in a different place. So it's pretty clear that those were not, that's not part of the model. Those are just bumps that happened when that came out of the mold. So this is another one of those complaining about, I'm doing that a lot with this model, is complaining about the build quality. Not my build quality. My build quality is adequate. I am doing adequate work on this thing, but it's the molding quality of the model itself that is leaving a little bit, in some cases, a lot to be desired. Quite disappearing the way I'd like it to. I need to get a little bit of sandpaper. I'm just going to tear off a tiny little piece, because I need to get some in there. Polish that down so that I don't have a lot of file marks. It isn't going to show a lot, but it's going to show some. At least it's not going to show bulges where there shouldn't be. My moment. Sandpaper in there. Okay, what I'm trying to do is put the sandpaper in there and then use the file to rub it. That's working not well. It was good that I rotated that anyway, because there were just, like, when I looked at it and there's this little piece of plastic dangling down from the bottom, you go, don't really need that there. I saw other parts, especially in here. It's just stuff that wasn't supposed to be there. I think, I got this new saw, which is really cool, and that works well. And I think what I'd really like is a set of needle files that was like 3 times finer than that, so that it didn't leave marks in the plastic, gouges. Well, there's another part. I've got, you want to see this? I've got astronaut guys, but I've got 3 parts right under the Dyson Dungeons logo. These 3 parts are actually cleaned up and ready to go. Yay. Sure, let's do this next. This is the same sort of thing where the mold came together, okay, and managed to leave mold marks all along the round part. And I think these 2 prongs are supposed to be the positioning things for it. We'll have to look at the instruction and to be sure. This isn't too bad compared to the other ones. Compared to the other ones, it's not too bad. There's a circle there. I'm going to try to file that down just a little bit so it's not quite so obvious. I can't file it all the way out because it's really deep, kind of like some of the others, but at least it won't have a raised edge. It won't look like there's a crater. It'll just look like an indentation that maybe was intentional. The antenna itself, too bad. It's a little bit of irregularity around the edge. Let's give it a little bit of polishing here. To look at the instructions because I want to see how this fits. I want to see where and how this fits. Oh, duh. Yeah, this is the thing that fits on here. I think it fits facing out. Let me make sure. In which case, those little protuberances are not supposed to be there, and I'll sand them out. Yeah, okay. Huh. I was playing with this before. It goes on like this. It's kind of neat that way. But these bits here are not supposed to be there. They don't attach to anything. They just stick out. It's not a helpful thing. The unfortunate part, among many unfortunate parts of this model, is that the circle, okay, is right up in front, and it's going to be very, very obvious. So there it is. It's just going to be very obvious. indentations too. Yeah, so they stuck out, but they were sticking out parts of the indentations. So, yeah, the whole front of this now is going to have all sorts of little holes in it. And we'll just pretend that those were intentional. This thing on the bottom, though, is not intentional. What we have there is a seam, but that will at least come off nicely. Okay, well, there's a cute little antenna that goes in a cute little bracket. Other piece is done. Yay. There's this antenna. This antenna is really quite a mess. Well, let's hope that that's not part of anything. No, that's not an attachment point. That's just screw. Yeah, the rounds, all of the rounds have ridges on them from the molding process. And then these, which look like attachment points, have a lot of flashing on them. It needs to come off probably really quite carefully. And I'm going to look at the instructions again. I should have kept the page open to where it should have been. I just want to see where this goes. This goes, that part that I broke off was actually an attachment point. Okay. This, even though it was just barely attached, it goes like this. Oh, lovely. Well, this is going to require some reconstruction. So when this comes together like this, there is this gigantic hole, and this goes here like that, and the part that popped off is supposed to go in there and go in the hole and hold it, and then these brackets are supposed to just sort of set on the top of it like that. So this needs to be reattached, and I'm going to go, what the heck? I'm going to reattach that after I clean the rest of this up. It actually was not attached. I mean, it was hanging on by a real flimsy little bit of stuff. So yeah, so that's a broken part. Anyway, I cleaned these up as much as they can be. These astronauts are ready to paint, at least prime. Okay. Actually, I could prime these guys too. Maybe I'll do that just to do it. These guys on Friday, I'm going to be spending a lot of time on Friday getting these pieces to be usable. I mean, not even presentable, but even usable. And then I'm going to finish cleaning this up and repair it. I should be able to do that. I've done more difficult things before. Okay, well, thanks for watching an episode of, another problem for the future. Thanks for watching another episode of Relaxing Filing and Sanding. And I did a little bit of painting on these rocket nozzles with Dyson Dungeons. On Friday, I will do again a little bit of painting as I take these nozzles off of the sticks and paint the insides of the nozzles flat black. That'll be exciting. And then I'm going to be spending a lot of time cleaning these up and making them usable. A little bit of time cleaning these two pieces up, because that's not too bad. Some time repairing this so that it works. And then, yeah, a little bit of cleanup on these two guys. So I don't know if you can see it or not, but there has been progress made on the ascent stage of the lunar excursion module. And then at some point in the future, I will be cutting out the windows, little windows that go into these eye sockets here on the LEM, and figuring out how to attach them on the inside. And then I will be very carefully taping them, and that tape will stay on there for a good long time, because then this needs to be cemented, and then it needs to be filed down, and then it needs to be primed, and then it needs to be filed and sanded again, and then it needs to be final coat painted, maybe after some of these other bits are attached. So yeah, this will keep going. I'm going to be able to hand paint the antenna. Okay, I'm going to hand paint those. I might attach this part here. I might attach that before I prime it. I probably will. I could do that now, but I don't have time, because the antenna that goes here just sets on top of the bracket. So this can be attached. These two side panel things probably will, if I can figure out where those go, those will probably be attached as well. And I very well may attempt to attach these all before I prime and paint it, so that the painting is just kind of uniform across the whole thing. And then the only things that will be attached later will be the 3 antenna, okay, and the do not cement in place hatch. Okay, I got some things done, moving along. Slowly, but still moving. And I will be back on Friday at about 10, continuing to plug away at these bits of the Ascent module. And some of it will be me whining a lot about how very badly these pieces are made. And then fitting them, deciding whether to fill in the gaps or not, that kind of thing. So depending on how it goes, I may end up cementing some of these parts in place, and then maybe filling in some gaps if the seams look like they're really, really artificial. I don't know why these go back. Huh. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why these weren't just molded on. I mean, look. This one goes on this side. They just slide in like that. Why didn't they just mold it? Why didn't they just mold it that way? I mean, what the heck? And now there's another part that needs to be fit, and then another seam that needs to be taken care of. So, it's like the front and the back of this were designed by 2 different people. Maybe they were. Okay. Well, that was a good deal of complaining today. Not quite as much fun as grumpy old curmudgeon complains about newfangled gizmos, but it was grumpy old model maker complains about how the pieces were created here. Thanks for watching, and I will be back. Yeah, you get to look at some paper towels here. I will be back on Friday at more or less 10, plugging away and doing more of this preparation of the piece for assembly, and painting insides of rocket nozzles, painting the insides of these little rocket nozzles. That's always a fun thing to do. I'm going to take the astronauts with me. I'm just going to take them because I am going to prime them. And if I don't have them with me, I won't remember to do that. I'm going to put them in their little astronaut container here. Yeah, I'm going to prime them, see how they look. If they look okay, I'm going to go ahead and paint them white. And then these will be ready for some detail painting that I might get around to Friday or Monday. Thanks for joining in. I appreciate it. Bye.